Today, I've got someone really special for you, Sandra Garlick. She's a speaker, mentor, visibility and business growth strategist, and the founder of Mic Drop. Helping business owners become confident, visible, and sought after speakers, Sandra was awarded her MBE for service to women in business in New Year's Honours 2020. With 25 years of experience, she's helped countless professionals own the stage, grow their personal brands, and step into that spotlight. If you want to boost your confidence, share your story, and get noticed, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Let's get into it. Sandra, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today because we were just saying a minute ago that we've kind of been in each other's worlds and like in our audiences, which is often the case. So it's great to connect with you. Share about you, what you're doing, and something random, fun, or something that we can take as a conversation.
Right, okay. Well, I am a mom, a granny. I've got two grandchildren, and yeah, life is a little bit different. I've got had elderly parents as well, so I've lived in that sandwich revolution for a few years, trying to look after my sons and my grandchildren, but also being around for my elderly parents, which has meant that my business has changed rapidly
Yeah.
to around that. So I'm a solicitor by trade. I no longer practice. And then I started a business when I broke my ankle in 2016. I call it my accidental business because it was never meant to happen. And while I was laid up with crutches and a broken ankle, I decided to simply do an event, put on an event while I was laid up. So I built a website, started some awards, and I said, in 90 days, we'll deliver this on stage. And 90 days later, on my crutches, we delivered it on stage. Only a one-off thing. It was like a project, really. And then somebody approached me and said, oh my gosh, you've got to do this again. And here I am delivering my 10th anniversary of my award this year. But the business has morphed. I've been speaking on stages for 25 years. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been doing speaker training and speaker mentoring and just really creating opportunities for predominantly women in business, although I do work with a few men, and for helping them craft their story and get it out there. And I just absolutely love it. Put a mic in my hand and I can't sing, but I can talk. So yeah, that's what life looks like now. And yeah, my mum's now in a care home. My grandchildren are at school, so now it's time for me. And I'm really making my lifestyle and my work style work for me right now.
That is so important and definitely something I'm really leaning into a lot this year is do I love what I do in a business? And if I don't, I really challenge myself to why I'm doing it and creating a lifestyle. And I guess no matter how hard you try, you always have to call yourself out on stay in your own path and in your own lane. And we know that we're very similar audiences with who my mentor, you're in her world as well. So you see it a lot. It's so easy to compare or get in that mindset of oh, what they're doing and following stuff. And just sticking to what you want to do, your journey, your path, as we said, is so important. With what and I think I'm demonstrating that because it's not an easy one, but you do have to do it and commit to it. And I think what I've seen from what you shared on socials and definitely how you're showing up today is you're very personable. You seem a likable lady, which I think is really helpful. Where has that come from? Because as well, like some people where you just at events would be like, that's the worst thing I could think of ever doing in my lifetime. Where
Yeah.
did that come before? And like you just said, like again, getting a mic in front of yourself and just going for it. Like, has that been a drama background or anything else? Where's that come from?
Well, I did do drama at school and I sang in a choir and I was I've talked about this a lot recently and because I believe in sharing warts and all. I don't think life is a smooth thing and people can see you out there on social media and think you have this amazing life and it isn't like that at all. So I do share it warts and all. And I've shared recently that I wasn't a confident child, but when I went to infant and junior school, it was a very small school. It was a very new school. So everyone was new on the first day. It was brandly new and built. And they instilled this confidence in us that made us feel that we could do anything. And my mum always said to me, you can be anything you want to be. And I genuinely believed her. There was a lot she didn't tell me to do, but that was one thing that I carried forward. So I genuinely believed I could be anything I wanted to be. And that went right through to my teens. So I did get on stage. I was at the front of the class. I was putting myself forward for everything. And then all the stuffing got knocked out of me I went to an all girls school and I was then bullied. I was part of cliques. It was just a horrible experience. And I didn't really get my confidence back until much later, till I was in the working world and I
Mm.
went into sales and marketing. And I think that set me up with the skills I needed to
Yeah.
be a people person. But then when I went into the soliciting world, as I call it, solicitor, not that sort of soliciting, when I became a solicitor, we had to be professional, we had to be suited and booted. And it was very much a male dominated environment. And I lost my spark a bit. And I've had to educate people that I am approachable, I am friendly,
Yeah.
I am not that person, that mask that I wore during that period of time when I was practicing law, because you had to stand by your professional ethics. But when I opened my own law firm, I decided to be different and buck the trend, and I bought a red dress. I wanted to stand out for all the right reasons, and all the solicitors were dependable blue, and their websites were all blue and full of trust and everything. And I, as I say, went totally red. Everyone went, "Wow, what is this?"
Yeah.
And but that's when I made my mark. That's when I really sort of put myself out there. And that's when the stage became my friend. And I realized I could get clients and I could get work that way, not by selling from stage, but by being approachable, by being somebody that people could come and talk to.
That's really, really interesting because a lot of the work I do with messaging, and I'm interested to come on to at some point the storytelling you mentioned earlier. But the standing out, I know when I left corporate after 20 years, I had a lot of work to do. I even went into grief recovery because that sense of identity was so wrapped up in how you show up is this and you have to be that. And just it was a complete shift I had to go through of who is Natalie, how do I want to be? And even now I'm still very aware of things that you have to lean into being the buzzword, but authentic.
Yep.
But you also have to you do have to stand out and be known for something. And I know sometimes I always say that part of my messaging is I'm known for no BS. I'm known for direct communicator, but I am empathetic. I am compassionate, but I'm also not going to be the person that you probably come to and go, well, that's okay. You haven't done it. Let's cool. Let's just go. It's going to be like, no, let's break it down. Like, what's gone wrong? Where are we at? What are we going to do? How are we going to be forward? Let's go and do it then. Come on. And I have to really stand by that and trust that. And that's important to me. And that's what I want to be known for. And for some people that works, that's great. And if it doesn't for some as well, that's amazing. I just, as you were saying, like I want to share all of that with people where it's sometimes hard. You can lose people in that. But I also need to build a business that feels right by me and attracts the right people.
And I totally identify with that. And I am not what I call a fluffy person.
Yeah.
So I'm not a huggy, and that doesn't mean to say I don't support people, because I do. I will always be a listening person. I'll always reach out, etc. But I'm not going to tell you it's all going to be okay if it's not going to all be okay. I
Yeah.
will tell you, when I work with my clients, I tell them as it is, and people want honesty, and that's one of my core values, honesty. And I live by that. And if, as you say, people in my world, if they stick around, they like what I'm doing. If they don't, then they're not my people.
Yeah, I love it. Whereas I know you have an MBA as well. Expand on everything you've done. I'm really fascinated about the awards thing and how that's grown because that is phenomenal. And I did an event last year. It was my first one. We had about 25 people, which was amazing. Um, but people coming up and saying, "Oh, you're excited for your first one." I was like, "Yeah, I've done those in corporate. Like this is it's exciting, it's good, but like this is, I can this
Yeah.
is kind of a thing I can do as well." How have you must absolutely love that whole experience.
It's hard work events, and if just doing events will never make you lots of money
No.
unless you do things around it. And my first event, I've been running events for years. When I was in corporate, that
Yeah.
I used to be the one that got roped in to pull the event together and make
That
sure
because
it
you were
was
good and
good.
organized, dependable, reliable, get it done, make it happen. We can trust her. Yeah, all of
Yeah,
that.
I was the one that communicated with
Yeah.
everybody, telling them where to be and how to get there and all that sort of stuff. And I loved bringing it all together. And it was through an event really that I first started in Women in Business, because I went to the senior partners at the firm where I was practicing law and said, I've got this great idea for a Women in Business event. We can invite them all for breakfast. Well, brunch actually,
Yeah.
after they've dropped the kids at school. We can give them coffee, tea, coffee, orange juice, juice, we can give them croissants and fruit and yogurts. And the partners said women in business will never take off. And that spurred something in me. And that's when I handed in my resignation and started my own law firm. But I sat on that idea for about 10 years. But the awards thing came into play just simply as I'd planned out this event for years in my head. And then I'd written it down. I've got an ideas book. Everything I come up with in my head goes into this ideas book. So I mapped it out. I knew who I was going to invite. I knew who I wanted to speak. It was all mapped out. And I thought, well, why don't I do this as a one-off? And I love the buzz of the event. I love the planning. I love the organization. Obviously love being on stage. I never used to host my own events. I used to sit in the audience and pay somebody to host them. And somebody said to me, why aren't you hosting your own events? Because that's what you do. And I said, I never thought about it. And I never sold anything from my events. I didn't sell a membership. I didn't sell. People said, how can we join? I said, well, there's nothing to join. And I really missed a trick. I was so naive in
Yeah.
that side of things at the start. And it wasn't until I started thinking about it, well, actually, yes, this is a business. This is a business in its own right. And then I started creating the things around it, what I do now, the programs, the courses, the training, the speaker training, I've always done business mentoring. That's my thing. But I started creating the things that people wanted, and the events have just flowed from that. Two main events that I run are the Woman Who Achieves Awards and the Solopreneur Awards each year. And then I run some smaller events, and then I'm launching something brand new this summer with Mic Drop Live, which is going to be something very different, actually, in that a lot of people want to speak, but they're frightened to speak, or
Yeah.
they don't know if they can do it, or they're not sure how they'd feel standing on a stage. So, you hear about open mic when you go to a pub and somebody comes along and sings a
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing open mic for speakers.
Amazing. Wow.
So they get to have a go and see what it feels like and get that photograph and
Yeah.
just get that feeling of standing on a stage, even if it's only for a few minutes, but they get the feeling.
Yeah, that is massive and it's immense. It's incredible, like you say, just there's a big part about I see a lot of people lacking belief, especially the last year or so, of can I achieve it and will it work, the certainty. And I think as you're getting across here, I'm a big believer in I always say I'm not very woo, but I am a huge believer in energy and again what you attract. And again, how you talk about things is here, it's like you can tell that you live and breathe this and you really mean it. And that comes across to people. People feel that. And I was just saying to a friend earlier, actually, because she was saying, I've been listening to your podcast and said, I want people to feel when they come into my world that they belong. And if it's right for them, great. And if it's not, okay, that's all right as well. Then who do I know? And I'm always want to be a big connector. I did it very well. I talk a lot about like superpowers. And that's always kind of one, like you said, events and things, you've always communicated well. Like I just seemed to connect people or I knew people and I could make stuff happen by the click of my fingers. And
Yeah,
people like that. And so I'm really big about bringing that into, again, small business as well, because I think it's so important. But as you said there, there's so many people just is that sense they belong, the belief that you can do this, give it a go. There's people with you, there's people that believe in you. There's genuine people that want you to win in a world where we're always pulled down or we're judging one another naturally all the time. It's so important. And I think, like you said, you've like events aren't easy and I've seen that and I see some people do events and people go, oh, it's this and it's that thing like do you like have you got any idea what that takes to put on as well? It's incredible just from that element. It's
it
massive.
is the moving parts and I mean, even during the pandemic when that just killed events, it
Cool.
was it was thinking of how can I do this? And I
Yeah.
was so lucky that my AV crew built a studio in their warehouse. And so I delivered it
Yeah.
online. I still went ahead. I still did it. Yes, it cost me financially, but I still felt that those people deserved that event that they'd
Yeah.
booked and wanted to be at. And but there is so many moving parts. It's just the planning, I mean, I have somebody that helps me. I've got a VA that's an event specialist, and she works with me now because it's grown into a beast and I can't do. Well, one of my events, we'd sold over 200 tickets before Christmas. It's not even till May. So, there is a lot of moving parts. And when it gets down to people's menu choices, I just pass that over because it's just got ridiculous now. But I love it. I love the whole bringing people together. And you mentioned that. And what I've found is over the years, and because it's the 10th anniversary this year, I've got people coming saying, "Oh, well, I'm working with such and such. We're now working together. We met at Woman Who."
Love it.
Or somebody else will say, if it wasn't for Woman Who, I wouldn't have done this. And it's the connections that people make just
Yeah.
from being in the room. And I just love that. I feel like a proud mum that, I've created something that could facilitate, a new business or somebody working with somebody else or a project coming together or somebody just having the confidence to do something else. And if I can facilitate that first step for anybody, I'll do it.
That's really key. And I guess online we talk a lot about making money, and we know that's always, that's why we have a business. We're clear on that. But do you feel that, again, like you just said, the connections that can be made? I love, getting out, meeting new people. And it's a big thing I've got and a challenge myself, how I do it a bit differently this year is, again, meet new people in different spaces and completely different audiences. I've got one out in Canada, and like it's very, very different. They'll talk about unicorns and magic, and I'm like, how do I sit in this? So I'm open to it. But I guess, like, do you think that from a visibility point and you like again getting your story out there, getting in front of the right people with what you're doing, what can people do differently to really like sometimes let go of chasing the money all the time, or that's the next thing, and just genuinely believe that because it's not always a metric that's measurable, is it? Like you just said, but I know so many people and opportunities I've had and who I've met through events. How can we change and reframe people's perspectives on that and change their mind around events in that way?
I always say that, putting yourself into different spaces. I'm attending different events this year, going to things where I don't know people. And that's really hard, even for me, walking into a room where I probably only know one or two people and trying not to gravitate towards them, because that's the worst thing you can do is just stick with the people but it's all about the conversations. It's not about the sale. It's about building the relationships. And I said this to people, showing my age here, but I've been on LinkedIn for nearly 20 years since its very first started. And I always said from day one, LinkedIn isn't about selling. It's
No.
about building relationships. Nurture those relationships, the sales will come naturally. And
Yeah.
I think if you work at it from that perspective, building relationships with people, building connections, people contact me and say, "I've been following you for years. I've never commented on your posts. I've never approached you, but now I need you." And
Yeah.
isn't that lovely, the way that you plant a
Yeah.
seed with somebody and you build that relationship over time. And then if they buy from you, that's just a bonus. And if you reframe it in that way, you're not constantly chasing the next sale. It happens naturally
Yeah.
because of who you are. And that's what I educate people on when they're standing on stages. If you get your message just right, your audience become your raving fans and the relationships start to flow and they gravitate towards you. You don't then have to go out, start looking for the work. It happens naturally. And that's how I like to work. I'm all about the relationships and the connections.
I love it. It massively resonates as well. And I always just say, like in corporate, that I guess leading teams, sometimes I'd have 500 colleagues and things, and it was all about them. Like I wouldn't get a result. I said, it's not me on my own. I can't get a result without you guys. We all come together as one team, and that's how we win. And it's the same in small business that you have to, you lead the way, leading your business, but you have to lead by example, like you say, have very strong values, talk about things you care about, get messages out there. So I'll always share around, especially when I left corporate, like it wasn't an easy journey. And that's part of my messaging and my story is that I've come from that world and how tough it was. And again, the values weren't aligned and why I'm doing what I do now and the drivers around things. It's so important. How do you help people to craft their storytelling through speaking?
What I do is I get them to look at what they've achieved, what their journey has been. I get them to look at the challenges they've had, how they've overcome them. And I get them to thread that core message right the way through whatever they're sharing. And I talk about it like a stick of rock. Everyone's been to the South Coast or Blackpool and bought that pink stick of rock and it says Blackpool in the centre. And
Yeah.
your message is something like you break that stick of rock, wherever you take a bite, wherever you break it, it's still got that word right the way through it. And that's what your message is. And that's how I teach people to basically take that message and weave it through their story to deliver it with impact, but not selling from stage. And I
Yeah.
think if you do it right and you craft it in the right way, the people naturally gravitate towards you.
100%. It takes time though, doesn't it? And doing that. It's sometimes for lots of people, they'll say, like we hear, I haven't got a story and things like that. I know when I did it as a process, I went away and it was quite cathartic, like wrote down my journey and then you pick out different things. And also I think what's important there is you can be vulnerable without, like you said, be transparent and honest, but you don't have to share everything all the time. And I think that's key about what you say there. It's working with people if you don't know where you're coming from with storytelling or wanting to speak as such, to getting that support so because they'll see sometimes things you don't see. And I think that's super valuable as well.
Yeah, I call it subtle sales. There is a way to have a subtle sales message
Yeah,
during whatever you're speaking about. But also, it's about being authentic. Nobody else has got your story. And I
no,
always say to my clients, never share anything you wouldn't want to see on the front of a newspaper.
yeah,
And I think if you follow that guideline, and I always say to my speakers, if you're standing there on stage and the audience is with you, then share what feels natural to you in that moment. However, if the audience isn't with you, then don't share it, especially if it's something sensitive or something which is emotional. And you can judge your audience. You know what to hold back and what to share. And quite often I'll share things that my audience will say, I never knew that about you. And I said, yes, but the space was right to share it.
yeah. No, I get that. And a bit again, it's that you need somebody to support you on that as well sometimes to identify certain things in the audience to
Yeah.
give and again like you said at the start like to just give you the confidence boost to do that. That's a brave thing in itself is to just go like think okay trust myself and go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's practice, that's
Yeah,
learning. It's about knowing what to put in, knowing what to leave out,
yeah,
what might be too sensitive, trigger warnings, all those different things. And also, it's not having the pity party, and being the victim. And I see so many speakers that share a story and they're just sharing their tales of woe. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what's the point? What are
yeah,
you trying to say here? So yes, I've seen that's the problem. I go to anybody's event now and I'm sitting there and I feel as if I'm analysing the speakers. And I see some brilliant speakers, don't get me wrong. Some people have got a
yeah.
natural gift. But other people I come away thinking, yeah, it was a really nice story, but what was she trying to tell me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right. You are right. But that's where you can get the help, isn't it? Like you said, everybody has that story. And it's like some people it's more of a gift and others it's not. I always tell people I'm super confident, but I've had to reframe it a bit now because that's useless to anybody. But it's kind of my superpower and I'll help you with stuff with that. But I think sometimes you just have to accept that you're very good at some things and lean into those and work on the rest. And as you say, I wish more people would just embrace the practice part, just get out there. I saw a post this morning from Gary Vee about, like, want to post on social media? Just post it. Like, just literally just do it. Give it a go for it.
yeah.
And I hope, no, what I'm getting here is that what you're bringing this year is kind of around that is getting out there and going for it. What do you have to lose?
Well, I think too many people are frightened of what they say,
Yeah,
how it will be perceived, frightened of upsetting somebody, frightened of offending somebody. And I think now, if we can't be ourselves
yeah,
and say what we think, then we're going to be a very boring, sad race. So I think everybody's got a story to share. Everybody's got a message. Everybody's got opinions. Everybody's got things they don't like. I throw a million things a day into room 101. I run a radio show, and one of my questions to my guests is, what would you put into room 101 right now? Because I think that's a great concept.
yeah,
We can all have our rants and things we don't like, but we just say we pop it into room 101 and that's it, is gone,
yeah,
But it can be said in a way that doesn't offend people as well. And I think that's the key.
yeah,
Um, it's explaining why you've got the rationale and acknowledging that people will disagree with you, and that's
yeah.
fine. It's
Yeah.
okay.
100%. We were talking to someone last week around, like we're engaging people. It's like just sometimes they're not going to be on board, but the why is there in as well. They may not believe in something or go with it, but collectively, if you're going with something, you do. But you have to, if you just talk to people about the rationale and the steps you take, people want to seek to understand, and that's the key there. Tell us about the MBE.
Right. Well, It started from that first event, that first awards event, and I ran it. And I was approached by the Federation of Small Businesses to go on their task force. They'd just published a report about barriers for women in business, and they said, go back to your regions and start your own network. So I did. And I started a network. It was called the Woman Who Inspires Network, and I invited women to share their stories. And that's how it all started. And then I published books, compilation books, where women could just share their stories to inspire others. And that was my mission. And unknown to me, somebody had put me forward for an MBE for the work I was doing with women in business. And you don't get to know who it is, and you just get a letter through the post. You're told you're sworn to secrecy. You can't tell us a living soul. And I almost missed it, but that's a story for another day. I was caring for my dad at the time. And basically, you just sign a form to say you accept. And I remember speaking to them. I said, can I ask who nominated me? And they said, no, we can't give that out, that information. But the biggest thing is they do a full check on you with HMRC.
Oh,
So
wow.
the only clue I had, and didn't even think about it at the time, I got a massive tax rebate of £4,500 out of the blue in the October. And I thought, where's this come from? And I spoke to my accountant, said, I've just had a massive tax rebate. He said, just cash the check. He said, enjoy it, So thank you. I went to Florida. But I never thought anything more of it until I got that letter in the November. And then the New Year's, then you don't even know anymore. They don't communicate with you. And then suddenly, it was published in the New Year's Honours List, and there it was, an MBE. Sadly, due to COVID, I couldn't collect my award straight away. But later, I did go down to Windsor Castle, and I was presented by Princess Anne.
Amazing. What a proud moment.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't take the family because at the time we were still under COVID restrictions, so I was only allowed to take one person. It was all very stifled and social distancing. But yeah, I bought the video. I've got the pictures and I've got the medal. Although it sits in a box.
Bless. But right? I think it's so important. And these become, I often say to people, like, what are your drivers each day? Like when, like you said, like when you get your tough days, and sometimes you get more tough days than you get good days in a month or a year. But leaning into those, like why you do what you do, the people you do it for, the people who, like are amazing around you. And exactly moments like that are so key to have.
Yeah, and I did question whether to use the MBE. I thought, oh, does it sound a bit, I'm bigging myself up. But somebody spent a lot of time completing that application. You have to get references and all sorts.
Yeah.
Somebody took the trouble to do that. I can't not, celebrate that fact that I was awarded that. Not everybody gets one. The
No.
the work that I did, and I did do a lot of work, not for that, but I was rewarded for that. And I think, well, why shouldn't I use it? Why shouldn't I celebrate the fact that I achieved something? And I think that too often as women, which I've found through my awards as well, is women won't put themselves forward because they don't want, they feel it's bragging.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is celebrating our successes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We got engaged last year, which was really exciting. And one of my friends says, I love love. And I was like, oh. And then since then, like, I was actually, well, I'm still on cloud nine to a degree, but it's very much that element I've taken to business and thought, do I approach business in the same way? Because again, I'm very driven and focused and ambitious, but I am also very much centered again on, like you said at the start, the roundedness more of life, and that work creates the life I want. I'm not, living to work. And that I've taken and put into business and going like, I want to absolutely love what I do and I want to enjoy these moments and I will celebrate them and I will shout about them and I will be proud of them. I think that's really important. And likewise how you are with others on that. Some people can pull people down quite quickly opposed to actually just like like just celebrate their success and want people to do really well. That's the type of person I want to surround myself with.
Yeah, and that's why I share a lot when people do speak on my boot camps and things like that. And I do share the pictures of them speaking, and they look at them and they think, oh gosh, that's me. And
Yeah.
you would be surprised. I say at the end of my boot camps, if you want to get some pictures with the microphones in front of the speaker backdrop, get them. I'll tell you something, they're all racing to get the pictures on the stage, and the same at my awards. Every single person who enters gets to go on the stage at the awards to get their photograph to
Yeah.
celebrate that moment. Because isn't it awful if you sat there, you see another winner going up, and you're just sat there and think, oh, and nothing happens. Whereas if you're invited onto stage as well,
Yeah.
isn't isn't that better? I just love creating those opportunities for people to have those moments.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important you share all of this because we definitely got a lot of work to do on like doing more around this, as you say, and celebrating success, cheering it on, being in the moment, but actually bringing everybody together that they're all winners is because it only just drives more success, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I've always said if I share my story or go on a podcast like this, if I say one thing that inspires one person to take
Hmm.
that first step forward, job done.
Yeah. Well, I'm really, really curious. One thing you said earlier was about an ideas that you sat on an idea for 10 years and then you have a little bit of an ideas, I guess, an ideas bank, which I have similar. I have a Google Drive because entrepreneurial head, sometimes I can be like, oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try that. And I often ring my friend who's like, no, nah, it's a nice idea, but no. And I'm like, yeah, but and he's like, no, it's a no. So where do you look back at that exact example, but also with ideas? Like, I guess, do you ever, not regret, probably the wrong word, but do you look back and think, oh, I wish I hadn't sat on that idea for so long and made it happen? And are you similar now with ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I never regret. I always look back to learn.
Yeah.
Uh, and any mistakes I've made, which I've made hundreds, I call them learning curves.
Yeah.
So I have got an ideas book. It's now on my Remarkable. I've got an ideas section in there. If I get an idea, and I get hundreds of them,
Yeah.
I get an idea, I brainstorm it. I've calmed down a bit on the domain names now. I used to at one point I had over 100 domain names. Um, yes, I would just grab them quickly in case the idea was going to come to fruition. And then every month I would go through and I would look through the ideas and perhaps tease a little bit more out of them or say, right, that's a stupid one. And so I constantly go back and review these ideas, always reviewing, always reflecting. Some of
Mm,
them come to fruition. So Mic Drop, for example, was an idea I had 12 months ago, but it's taken me till now to launch that. But I've worked on it behind the scenes. I've
yeah.
nurtured it. I've done all sorts around it to make sure that it's right for where I'm going in the future. Whereas there's loads of ideas that I haven't even touched, and I'm thinking, no way, no way. I'm not doing anything with that one. I'm just going to completely bin it. So yeah, there's lots of different things but you have to work on those ideas. Yes, there have been ideas that I've had and I've since seen somebody else doing them and think, damn, I had that idea. I could have done that and gone there. But yeah, no regret. The only learning from that is if I have an idea and it looks good, follow it through.
Yeah, I love that. I think too many people wait and sit on them and like you said earlier, like don't give them a go and but there's a balance as we got there. Like you need your kind of remarkable with those points on and note it down
Yeah.
and actually sometimes like you say, you come back to and think, actually no, I've got this now and things like that and give it a bit of space.
Yeah.
Just started adding more this year. I did it last year, I was doing like a CEO day I was doing it like each quarter and now it's like each month, but just a bit of time out as well, just to, like you said, like reflect, evaluate, look at what's going well, what's not. And I think that's really powerful. And like I said, just giving myself a bit of time out to say, where do I sit on things? Is this a now? Is
Mm.
it a later thing as well? Just in terms of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that time out to reflect. I work in 90-day chunks,
Yes.
spring, summer, autumn, winter, VAT quarters, call it what you like. That's how I work. And there's a reason for that because it's a short enough period to see a change and not get bored.
Yeah.
And I think, you can do a lot in 90 days, but
Yeah.
always at the start, in the middle, and at the end, I have that reflection piece. And we don't do it. And as I said to so many women with the awards, even if you don't enter, download the form. How often do you look at how much you've achieved, what you're doing now, and what your goals and aspirations are for the future? We never sit down and do that reflection piece.
Right.
And it's so, so useful. And so many people have fed back because I like to give value. If somebody's taking their time to enter awards, I want to give them a value piece.
Yeah.
And so many people say to me, oh my gosh, I keep them from year to year and look back and see how far I've come. And I think, yes, job done.
Love that. I always ask people if we haven't kind of covered it, but what does success mean to you?
Success to me, and I've talked about this recently. Last year, I decided that I was going to create a lifestyle and a work style that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I gave up a contract, a very lucrative contract last year that paid me a lot of money in both money and bonuses and all sorts. But it took my time. And some weeks I was giving 70, 80 hours to that contract. I didn't have a life. So success to me is about creating a work style and lifestyle that I can have the best of both, if you know what I mean. I joke and say I'm condensing my life into 4 suitcases, spring, summer, autumn, or winter, so I can work from anywhere in the world that's got sunshine. And that may happen, but it's about, it's no point having all the money in the world if you're constantly burning out. And that's what I was doing. Now
Yeah.
I've created something where I don't generally work Mondays, I don't work Fridays, unless I'm going to somebody's event and it looks really good, but that's a non-work day for me. And I've created a work style and lifestyle where I've got time to enjoy the money I create.
Yeah.
Because there's no point having all that money sitting there if you don't have time to enjoy it and you've got health issues. And I'm working on being healthy, and I talk a lot about ikigai and finding that
Yeah.
sweet spot.
Yeah.
If you can do something you're passionate about, if
Mm.
you're knowledgeable about it and you can be paid for it, and it gives you a purpose, that sense of being every day. And
Yeah.
there's no such word as retirement in Japanese culture. They live their ikigai, and I believe that that is my principle. That's how I live life. And if I get out of bed in the morning and don't like what I'm doing, I change it.
Yeah, there's a great book on that as well. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
happiness. Yeah, I had it a few years ago. And I think that was very much my story when I left corporate was, and COVID probably, I wouldn't say created that, but it definitely got me into that cycle of I was kind of work, I wasn't in a relationship. I'd go to the gym, I'd do an hour or two there, and then I'd go to home. And it'd just be the same little triangle cycle the whole time. And it got to a point where, like I said earlier, I was just the values aren't aligned anymore. I'm not enjoying it. I've got no sense of purpose. I'm working 70 hours a week. And again, it's like I'm getting the money, but I'm not with anybody to do anything with it, or people are busy, they've been in relationships, they've got kids. I travel when I was able to travel on my own and I enjoyed it, but I didn't then want that for the future and things. So the whole point around corporate was, like the risk for me was not taking the risk. People say it's really
Yes.
risky, but it's like if I don't do it, that's a bigger risk that I get close to the end of my life and I haven't had true purpose or I don't share it with somebody, which is ultimately what I want. And that's what I deem as like again, success and happiness. And I think like you've just echoed there, we've really got to just take the time to define what is success, what is happiness. And that's where this podcast came about. Like, success on your terms is, I remember working with my mindset coach a few years ago, and it was actually for when I was speaking, it was Danny Wallace's event. I spoke there and I spoke around freedom and things. And that was part of, again, the journey of leaving corporate and just like what is freedom right now? And it was really tough. That's why I said it's not always easy to do the story stuff. I remember working through it and I was like, what do I share? What do I not? What do I believe? What do I not? Where am I at? What's my journey? And a lot of that sense was I have freedom right now. Again, I think people chase it. I want to get here, want to get there, and I can do all these holidays and that. And I was like, Renee just said, can you go to the gym when you want? I was like, yeah. She's like right now. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, so why would that not be freedom? And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. So I had to really reframe and start to measure like daily things, like what is the freedom? Even if I haven't got clients in, it's like I can get up when I want. Like you
Um,
said, I can have Fridays off.
yeah. It's and if I choose, I mean this I had to work this weekend because it was a deadline for my awards.
Oh,
But, I chose to do that.
yes.
But next week I'm on a beach.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and like you say, but that fuels the fire in me because I also love what I do, and then I want to work. There's some weeks where and seasons as well, like we know, where it's busier, and that
yeah,
and I love that, and I go all in, and I don't mind it, and I manage things around it, or people around me know that oh she's busy right now because this is
yeah,
happening,
yeah.
and that's a part of creating what you want. It's so important to spend time to really craft this out and think around it and be okay with it.
Yeah, I think what I've learned as well is if ever I'm creating an event or hosting an event, I take a week off afterwards to
Yeah,
because it
100%.
takes everything out of you. And if I run like a training or a workshop, I always take the next day off
Yeah.
because I don't know whether you're like me, you give
Yes,
everything
it is.
and physically, and
Yeah.
you need that time to wind down. And I find that when I attend other people's events now, sometimes I'm information overload, and I
Yeah.
just need that time to reflect and to decompress, if you sort of mean. So that's something I have built in now. Every time I host one of my events, is about 4 a year. I book a week and I go off.
That is so important. I was really a bit against a few years back about the whole I don't need a spa day thing. And then I saw someone actually again talking around happiness at Christmas time last year. And he was like, spa days are the best things ever. And I was like, oh, do I need to change my mind? So I've definitely again like that's why the CEO day's been a bit of a core one each month now. And I know I'm gonna start unpacking it with a few spa days and things. But I think the sentiment's more around time out for me that, like no social medias kind of thing, just really switch off, really just give that space. And that is the real juice of what I need to then keep me fired up.
Yeah, and that beach has got no GPS. I
Yeah,
can walk 100 yards from the hotel and there is no reception, nothing. And it's
perfect.
just, and you sometimes don't see another person, which is fantastic. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need that space. But then when I get back to my sunbed, the ideas have all come and I have to write them all down.
That's the bit, isn't it? And yeah, it's exciting though. I love it. Sandra, I knew it'd be a great conversation. It's been really lovely to hear about you, your business, your journey, and to know more for me because I haven't really explored everything you shared. So it's definitely intrigued me to more, but also bring people. One of my favorite quotes is Disney's where he talks about do what you do really well and do it so well that you bring others back to see what you do, type of thing. And I love that. It's like, you just share it. You should come as well. And I was on my membership yesterday and there's somebody going to an event. And I was like, what's the event? I was like, tell us, like, let us know. Even if we can't get to this one, maybe it's next year. Let us know.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. I just love the whole connections thing and
Yeah.
introducing people to new people and facilitating that. And I just absolutely love it.
How can people connect with you and find out all about everything you're doing this year?
Everything that I do is on my website, and that's womanwho.co.uk. You can follow me on socials, Sandra Garlick on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
If this episode gave you something to think about, helped you in any way, or just made you feel seen, do me a favour, hit subscribe, leave a quick review, and maybe share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive deeper or need help, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time.